whenever I was on the highway patrol, my last 7 years, I was over the training unit for the highway patrol. And I had one of my staff members occasionally would come in and talk to me. And sometimes it would be about work issues. Other times it might even be about a personal life. But I remember this one day, this trooper came in and shut the office door and just talked to me about all of this stuff that was going on. And I just sat there and listened. And finally, at the end of the conversation, the trooper looked over at me and said, I know exactly what you're going to say. I know exactly what you're thinking. You're going to tell me that I need to do this, and you're thinking that I need to go and do this, and you're probably right. And then the trooper just got up and left my office, and I never said a word. And later, the trooper came back and told me, said, you're just one of the smartest guys that I know. And I never had to say anything. Well, my name is Richard Coleman, and I'm the pastor at Shepherd Church of the Nazarene in Lexington, South Carolina, and it's great to spend just a few moments with you today. Been looking in the Gospel of Luke, and one of my favorite stories in the Bible, in the New Testament, is what they call the Transfiguration. It's where Jesus goes up on a mountain and he takes 3 of his disciples with him. Well, what had just happened, and this is a sequence, it had just happened that Jesus had just told his disciples that he was going to have to suffer and that he was going to die. And of course, the disciples were just flabbergasted with all of that. But Jesus had just tried to give them that little bit of heads up that was going to be coming down the road. Well, it's obvious that if Jesus is talking about it, it's on his mind too. I'm just going to tell you, there's some things that I just dread. If I'm going to the dentist and I know they're going to be drilling on one of my teeth, I dread it before I get there. If I'm going to the doctor and they're going to draw blood, I dread it before. There's just some things I dread before they happen, but I know that I have to go forward and get it done. I believe Jesus knew this was something he'd have to go through, but he wasn't looking forward to it. And so right after he talks about this, he goes up on this mountain to pray. He takes Peter, James, and John with him. Well, when they get up on this mountain and Jesus is praying, Peter, James, and John, they start dozing off a little bit and they kind of sleepy. But whenever they open their eyes, standing before them is Moses and Elijah. And Jesus is in conversation with Moses and Elijah. So these are men from way back in the Old Testament, and now they have appeared to Jesus. The Bible doesn't tell us what they talked about, and so if it's okay with you, I like to read between the lines. But I'm thinking Jesus has on his mind about everything he's going to have to go through. And so who better for God to send to Jesus than Moses and Elijah? I mean, Moses led people and they did nothing but gripe and complain, and they were ready to desert him at any time, and so many times. They were just ready just to give up, and Moses persevered, and God took care of Moses. And then Elijah. Well, Elijah, God allowed him to do some mighty things, and then the queen put a contract out on his life, and he was basically running for his life, and God took care of Elijah. And so I like to read between the lines and realize that the reason God sent those 2 to Jesus at that moment when Jesus was contemplating all the things he was going to have to go through, these 2 guys were able to say, look, your Father, our Heavenly Father, he took care of us in the most desperate of times. And don't you worry, God is going to take care of you too. Simon Peter, when he saw what was going on, he's one of these, and he just spoke up. He said, oh man, we probably ought to build 3 altars. I don't know what, and we probably need. And about that time, a voice came from heaven. And the voice said, basically, be quiet. Listen to what my son has to say. God gave us 2 ears, 1 mouth. And I believe there's a reason for that. I believe we should probably listen twice as much as we speak. And there are times in our life where we just need to listen. And if we find ourselves going through a tough time, like Jesus did, if Jesus went through a tough time, we are too. And so if we're going through a tough time, God very likely, could very likely happen that he would send a Moses and an Elijah into our life. Someone who has been there and done that. And so when we're going through those tough times, I think it's important for us to open our spiritual eyes, open our spiritual ears, and listen to some people that are around us. And we might find that if we do that, that God has brought someone into our life to speak wisdom into our life, to encourage us as the days go by. So may the Lord bless you and keep you. May his face shine upon you. May you truly listen this week to what God has for you. Thanks for taking the time and viewing today.